everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. It's just me today. It is Thursday, September 16, 2021, recording at 12:32 p.m. Central Time. And today I will be taking you through the Chicago Bears versus Cincinnati Bengals team comparison, which the teams take each other on at Soldier Field this Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Time. This episode, again, I'll be discussing the high-level comparisons and who has the advantages and disadvantages in certain areas. But before we dive into it, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Fully Promoted. Fully Promoted is one of the premier branded apparel and promotional product stores in the Chicagoland area. T-shirts, polos, quarter-zips, coffee mugs, chains, golf rags, you name it, they got it. And make sure that you call 847-272-9000 and tell Mike that Nick sent you from Just Another Year Chicago. So let's jump into it. Little overview, little quick news about the Chicago Bears today. The Bears are 0-1 and the Bengals are 1-0. The Bengals actually took down the NFC North rival Minnesota Vikings 27-24 in Cincinnati on a very, very late overtime. Could have been a tie if they missed the field goal, but it was an overtime field goal done by their rookie undrafted free agent kicker. Very, very exciting for him. Very proud for the Cincinnati Bengals. Best of luck to them, but they are our enemies this week. So hope that doesn't happen against the Bears this week as well. The Bears are 0-1 after their 14-34 loss against the LA Rams in LA. It was on national television. They're coming off a very tough loss, but overall there is hope for this week as this is a very different team than the title contender potential from the LA Rams. The Bears are all over the place with a young offense and nearly aged defense, while the Bengals are overall young and up and coming to watch out for, led by number one overall pick from the 2020 NFL Draft, Joe Burrow out of LSU and technically Ohio State, depending on how you look at it. Matt Nagy, a few updates today in Chicago Bears press conference. Matt Nagy said that, quote, Justin Fields provides a lot of value as a chess piece to the Chicago Bears offense. No idea what that means. I hope that the Bears also do concussion tests on their coaches because Matt Nagy is completely all over the place in regards to his game plan, his opinions, his statements. I know that a lot of fans are frustrated by it, but don't worry. If you go back to our last episode, we don't think Matt Nagy is going to be staying around much longer. He also has 4-1 odds of being the first NFL coach fired this year. So if you're a betting person and you think Matt Nagy is going to get the boot, especially if the Bears lose to the Bengals this week, you're a good betting man. Injury report from the Chicago Bears is that Larry Borom did not practice again as of so far. It has not been reported by Bears PR. I'm sorry that if he did end up playing today, but as of right now, yesterday on Tuesday, September 15th, the Bears rookie left tackle did not practice due to his ankle injury. Jason Peters, who suffered a quad injury against the LA Rams, did have limited practice, so it's looking like he may be ready for Sunday's game. The Bears have not confirmed that yet, so look out on our Instagram and on our Twitter for more information on that, or Bears PR Twitter. Robert Quinn, who has a tightness in his back, again, was limited as well. If Robert Quinn's not going to do well, Chicago Bears, in my opinion, and I'm sure you guys can comment it below, Robert Quinn is not 100% to go. Give Travis Gibson the opportunity to play. He's healthy, he's young, and he's got a lot to show, and potentially we can get rid of Quinn's contract somehow in a trade this upcoming season or off season. And Darnell Mooney is 100% back from his back injury that was reported last week before the LA Rams game. He's looking good, fully committed in practice, and good to see that going. So that's our overview and our news. Let's go into team comparisons between the Bears and the Bengals. The Chicago Bears offense is the number 22 overall ranked offense in the NFL, according to ESPN. Passing yards, they're 24th. Andy Dalton did complete 71 of his passes this past Sunday, but it only went for 206 yards. He did have an interception, and he did not make any throws more than 15 yards. You could blame Dalton for not taking the risk, but also Matt Nagy's play calling as well. So overall, you could see a lot more deep balls from Andy Dalton as I'm about to get into the Cincinnati Bengals defensive ranking, so stay tuned for that. The rushing ranking for the Chicago Bears offense is 10th overall, carried by David Montgomery, who's the number 2 rusher in the NFL entering week 2. He had 106 yards on 16 carries. Very awesome for David Montgomery, 6.8 yard per carry average and a touchdown against the LA Rams. David Montgomery, if he is on your fantasy team and he was on the bench last week, you definitely want to put him in your flex or your RB2 in week 2 for your team. Don't take my fantasy advice. Don't come at me if you don't have David Montgomery or you've already done that before. But overall, it's looking like David Montgomery's in for a big year, especially against this Cincinnati defensive line. Rushing. So we just went through the rushing ranking. Apologies about that. Our offensive line ranking was shockingly 24th against the LA Rams. There was a lot of pressure on Andy Dalton, so you can't really, be too surprised by that. But the Rams also had the number 5 ranked defense in the NFL after week 1. They contained Aaron Donald. Our Chicago Bears offensive line contained Aaron Donald pretty well to only 1 sack. And I believe he only had 2 quarterback hurries. Don't quote me on that. But overall, they did a very good job of containing the LA defense. In regards to the front 7, the secondary, on the other hand, definitely had the upper hand on the Chicago Bears and did not let them get down the field. I personally think that this rating is low, as there's a couple of plays that you can watch that have been posted by Adam Hodge and a few other big Twitter accounts that talk about how the interior line at least did a fantastic job at creating holes for David Montgomery and other plays. There's one play where Marquise Goodwin had a wide open lane on the left side, and he just decided to carry it a little bit more to the outside. Didn't work out well. Ended up being a 2-yard loss for Marquise Goodwin, when easily could have been a larger gain. So let's go into the Cincinnati offense. They're ranked 20th overall. So the Bears 22, Cincinnati number 20. Not much of a difference there. Their passing offense was ranked 21 overall, according to ESPN. Joe Burrow is still a dangerous and up-and-coming quarterback, but the Vikings defense was all over him this past weekend. Having 5 sacks, I'll get into that in a little bit. But he has weapons to throw around. You have T. Higgins, you have Jamar Chase, and you have Tyler Boyd. Young, up-and-coming wide receivers, very up-and-coming, and allows him to throw all over the field. So stay tuned for that. Look out to make sure in the Bears secondary, obviously, there's a lot of question marks around. Not Jalen Johnson, but Eddie Jackson. I know a lot of fans are still upset with him. He's going to hopefully come back this week and play with a lot of aggression, but not overly aggressive that he will get burned again, as the Cincinnati Bengals are definitely expecting Eddie Jackson to want to play absolutely out of his mind and potentially take risk. The Bengals are definitely going to try to chew him up. And Gibson Sr. as well, who also said earlier this week that he is disappointed in what he saw in the film. He's disappointed himself. He apologized to Bears fans and coaches and other teammates that he did not tap down the LA Rams wide receiver Jefferson during that one play where his elbow and knee hit the ground, ended up easily walking in for a touchdown. Unacceptable by the Bears secondary, but again, 21st overall passing offense going against his DBs. Hopefully that brings some confidence and the DBs can actually rebound and get themselves. They do have the 7th overall rushing offense though. Joe Mixon is an absolute animal. He is the only guy that outpaced David Montgomery for yards overall. Even though Montgomery had 13 less carries, Joe Mixon had 127 yards rushing. Very impressive, but he had 13 more attempts than David Montgomery. So pick as you want, but overall, it's going to be definitely a threat, especially with Joe Mixon on that side of the ball. The offensive line ranking, though, for the Bengals, not very good. 26 overall. They're only six teams behind them. Isn't very good. The Vikings had the 24th overall defense too against week 1. But the reason why that the Vikings defense did okay is because they had 5 sacks against the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals offensive line gave up 5 sacks, all to Joe Burrow, a lot coming in crucial moments in the game. And the Bears do, on paper, have a good defensive line. Hopefully they can rebound this week against the Bengals. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball, though. Let's talk about the Bengals first. The Bengals had the 19th overall defense after week 1, according to ESPN. They played the 13th overall ranked offense, according to ESPN and the Vikings. They only gave up 67 rushing yards, which is ranked number 6, but they gave up 336 passing yards, which is ranked 29. And what I want to get at right there with the Cincinnati defense is they contain Dalvin Cook, who is on paper and viewed by many a better running back than David Montgomery as of right now. So if they could contain Dalvin Cook, there's a good chance that David Montgomery could also get pretty well contained. So we hope for not, though. David Montgomery played against a very, very, very tough LA Rams defense, and he was able to rip it up. Aaron Donald was barely able to touch him. He was able to bounce off defenders. So stay tuned for that. Again, it's week 1. All the rankings still aren't the same. Come back week 8, and you'll get an idea of who really is legitimate and who is not on those sides of the ball. Let's go to the defense for the Chicago Bears. It's the 16th overall defense, which is kind of shocking, especially after what happened with the Bears secondary. They played the 13th ranked offensive line, so a lot better than the Cincinnati's. That's, twice as much, 13 compared to 26. You do some good math, there you go. If you take away the 2 defenses that the Bears gave up to Matthew Stafford on the one going to Cooper Kupp and the other one going to Jefferson, there was a total of 123 yards of the 312 passing yards that the Bears gave up. So if you do some math right there, you're already in the 100. Matthew Stafford really only threw for about 181 yards if you do the quick math. That's pretty crazy to me. That is actually pretty absurd. The Bears were ranked 24th and giving up 312 passing yards, but they were 8th in rushing yards. So these teams are very similar in rankings after week 1. and they didn't play the same type of opponent. The Rams, in my personal opinion, are a much better team than the Vikings, but that's not even being biased. We all know that's the truth. Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback. He has a great wide receiving corps, has great offensive linemen. And, the Bears were able to contain their rushing, though. The Bears only gave up 74 rushing yards, ranking number 8. So overall, I think the Bears offense is going to have a much easier secondary than the LA Rams. Having Jalen Ramsey gone is a huge thing. Jalen Ramsey was all over the field for the LA Rams, making plays on every single Bears wide receiver. You guys saw it. I saw it. It was crazy. He definitely wanted to rebound after the whole Darnell Mooney is Jalen Johnson's father situation that happened a couple months ago back in May. And people were saying it before the game. We definitely ate our words there, Bears fans. There's no doubt about that. The Rams are the number 9 pass defense after week 1. The Bengals are the number 24. So hopefully Matt Nagy has more confidence in his guys. I'm sorry. They are the 29th. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. They are the 29th. So hopefully Matt Nagy has much, much more confidence to throw the ball deep against this not as nearly as good secondary in the Cincinnati Bengals compared to the LA Rams. And again, like I said earlier, another concern that I have is that the Bengals were able to contain Dalvin Cook pretty well. I don't think that they're going to be able to contain David Montgomery as well. I think the Vikings were all over the place. They looked confused at points. And yes, the game went to overtime. But overall, if the Vikings are as good as they are on paper, they should have been able to blow out the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think David Montgomery still has a good shot in order to go against this Cincinnati defense. Again, it's one game. But if they can do it for a couple weeks in a row against some pretty legitimate running backs that have been proven in this league, that's pretty impressive. The Bengals passing game is not as effective as the Vikings. Joe Burrow is still young and will make mistakes. Hopefully the Bears DBs can eat that up. There can be a lot of pressure created by the defensive linemen, potentially throw some picks or tip some passes for the DBs to get. And again, I'm going to reiterate this again. The Bengals have the 26th ranked offensive line. That's pretty bad. There's only 6 teams behind them, and the Bears defensive line on paper looks very good. The Vikings were able to get 5 sacks again against the Cincinnati offensive line. So hopefully Bears will be able to do the same. But the team comparison overall is that they're very similar in regards to rankings, especially after week 1. But they did play different opponents, and just want to put that into perspective. The Bears had a much tougher opponent in the LA Rams. So overall, I think that the Bears do have the edge. In comparison overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, they are 2.5-point favorites as of right now. So stay tuned for that. More injury reports coming. Hopefully Larry Borum feels better. Jason Peters is fully able to go. Robert Quinn gets rid of that back injury, and the Bears are able to come back and show that they're the defense they are. And Sean Desai is able to get the DBs fixed and ready to go. So again, a lot of rambling by me, a lot of numbers by me. Hope you guys heard that loud and clear. Thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. Stay tuned for tomorrow and go on our Instagram. Trust me, you are going to want to go on our Instagram later tonight, as Tony has a big announcement for our episode tomorrow. You guys are going to like it, especially if you're hungry for some pizza in regards to the game this upcoming Sunday. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, and we will see you guys next time.